Hello there, it's Sarah from Paper Lovely. Thanks for joining me today. I have got two cards to share with you that I will be creating using the Spellbinders Fresh Packed Clear Stamp and Die of the Month. This is from this past April. So I've gone ahead here and I've used the die to cut out this little market bag. And I'm showing you, I had placed together one of the baguettes from the market tote set. I ended up not using that, although I do think it would be very cute in there, and maybe even using some of the peppers and things, the smaller things I think would work very well inside this tote as well. I ended up doing just stamping for this one though. So I'm going to do a little stamping and masking, and to help me out with that, I'm just going to trace around with my pencil so I know exactly where I want to place all of my goodies. We've got a set of 3 lemons, tomato, some strawberries, and then also a bouquet of flowers that you can place inside this tote. So I'm just thinking about how I want to lay this out. And I know that I want to do some layering so that I can have, something sitting in front of the others. I was really still thinking I was going to use that baguette, although once I got everything else down, it just looked too large compared to these stamps. So we're going to start with our tomatoes because I want them to be in the forefront of this bag. So I am going to stamp 2 of these down. The ink I'm using is from Concord and Ninth. This is Brickyard. I'm going to stamp that, and then I'm going to stamp another one off onto, actually it looks like I stamped both of these down first. And then I'm going to stamp that off onto a piece of my mint tape. And I'm just going to use that as a quick mask for when I place down my lemons, which I want to look as though they are behind this. So I'm going to stamp that out twice. Doesn't need to be perfect. It's just going to cover the tomatoes that we already have there. And then, of course, we have to give them their stems. So this ink is also from Concord and Ninth. It is Basil. I'm going to line that up as best as I can. And then we'll stamp that down as well. Now, as you'll see, my lineup there was not great. So what I'm going to do is just kind of over stamp that to just try and fill that in a little bit. And it'll work. I went ahead and put that away, and then I realized I'm going to need those as well to mask off because we're not going to want the yellow from my lemon bleeding into that green. So I'm going to stamp those twice as well, and then I'm going to take my scissors and just fussy cut these out quickly. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. We just want to cover the majority of this. And skipping ahead here, you can see I have got both of my tomatoes masked off. I've got my first little stem down, and I'm going to finish cutting this second one. And then we'll place it down as well. Next, we're going to stamp out our lemons. So when we peel away that mask, it's going to look as though our lemons are behind our tomatoes. For this, I'm using Lawn Fawn Sunflower ink. I'm going to again pull out that basil ink for the little stem and leaf for our lemon. And these are meant to line up together, but for the life of me, I could not figure out how to position them. So I ended up just using one on the ends, and I just used that to stamp all three. Lastly, we are going to place down some strawberries. And I had originally pulled out this cherry ink, and then I thought, no, I think I want something a little bit lighter. So you can see I'm searching through my ink swatches there, and I decided to go with Simon Says Stamp Blush. And then I will also pull out Simon Says Stamp Fairway to do the stem of the strawberry. We're just going to carefully position these to fill in our bag. The strawberries are just kind of floating around. Because I wanted to stamp these individually, I had to be a little bit finicky with how I was placing that stamp on my ink pad there. I didn't want to get anything stamped that I didn't want stamped. I kind of just filled these in as I went around. At first I thought I was only going to do 3, and then I decided I wanted a 4th. And then, well, I usually like things to be in odd numbers, so I decided to add a 5th. And at that point, I told myself I had to stop. And then finally, we will just add our little stems. Now we can pull away that mask, and we'll have our tomatoes nice and bright red in front of our lemons. And we're out on our tote. Just want to make sure everything's going to fit nicely. I'm going to add some art glitter glue to this, going pretty heavy on the top portion there, and then just lightly trying to touch this very thin weave. And we'll go ahead and press that into place. I really love these colors. They feel very fresh and like summery to me. For this sentiment, we're going to go with a tote full of thanks. And I'm going to stamp that out using my intense black ink. We'll add some our glitter glue and place that down on our card base. And I have trimmed this down to 4 by 5 1/4. So we're going to get a little bit of that white border peeking out behind this. For the inside, we'll add just a plain Nina panel. And that will complete our first card. For our second card, we're going to use the flower stamp, and this is a really pretty little trio of, I think they're supposed to be daisies. And I want to do this in the same mix of colors. So I'm going to do both the lighter green, which is our Simon Says Stamp Fairway, and the darker green, which is the Concord and Ninth Basil. And I'm just going to randomly stamp these to try and create a pattern. I'm trying to keep in mind that I am going to have these flowers on top. So I don't want to get them too close to one another, but I do want to get a good spread of these flowers all over the panel. And in lots of different directions, trying to turn it a different direction every time. Now I'm going to go in with the darker green. Just filling in a little bit along the edges here. I want this to look like a somewhat continuous pattern. Even though it's a very random pattern, I don't want it to be too cut off on the edges. And now we'll go ahead and add in our flowers. So for the darker green, the basil, I'm going to pull in that Lawn Fawn sunflower. I'm going to keep that consistent. The darker stems will all have the yellow flowers. And then for the lighter green, we're going to use that Simon Says Stamp blush. There I'm looking at, we got a little bit of an overlap there, but when it dries, it actually looks really good. They look like sort of wildflowers growing over top of one another. Again, I'm going to add a little off to the bottom here of that pink. I want to keep things somewhat even with our coloring, and also I don't want too much of a white border. I'm going to trim this down to 4 by 5 1/4. And then for our sentiment, I'm going to pull in some more of that Celestial Spellbinders cardstock. This is the same cardstock I used for the tote in our first card. And I'm going to stamp out the sentiment, Grown with Love. That strip of cardstock is 3/4 of an inch wide. We'll add some ATG to the back of our panel and place that here on the top of our card base. And then for our sentiment, I'm going to pop that up using some foam tape. I'm going to do a double layer of this. This foam tape is very, very thin. I think I just ordered the wrong one when I got it, but it's from a while ago. We'll go ahead then and peel away the backing, and then get that pressed into place. And of course, we'll trim away that excess. I'll add a plain Nina paper panel on the inside, just a line of ATG, and we'll pop that into place. And that will complete card number 2. Here are a few close-ups of the finished cards. In the description box below, you'll find my blog post, which has additional photos and links to the supplies I've used. If you enjoyed the video, please leave me a comment or a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.